Rage Nation? This is Alex Jr. You're watching the Rage Road Review, and in this video I'm going to review The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. I just watched it last week, and it is directed by David Fincher. David Fincher is one of the few directors that I really like that can consistently do really unique things with an R-rated movie. I totally respect him for that, because R-rated movies are movies that they don't sell a whole lot of seats just because of their limited audience, but the movie industry needs these types of movies, and they need a director like David Fincher just because he brings his own brand of dark storytelling into the mix out of all these big budget action movies that we've been watching over the summer. I think David Fincher is the perfect type of director for this type of movie. He's directed movies like Seven, which I still think is his best movie. The Game, obviously The Social Network, Zodiac, Panic Room, and Fight Club. In my opinion, these are all very great movies, Seven being the best out of all of them. And I love that David Fincher does he's really brave. You know, he does things that will make the audience the audience, they might not be ready to handle some of the things that are in his movies, and especially in this movie. This movie is essentially a murder mystery. There's a lot of hype going around this movie just because it is based off an international best-selling novel, in fact, a series of novels. And then later on it got made into a movie that was based in Sweden. And then now you have the American remake. And I don't know anything about the books. I don't know anything about the original movie. So I'm basing my review without any knowledge of the previous work. So I'm reviewing it as a standalone movie. My main comment is that it's not for everyone. It's definitely not a genre that I constantly seek out to watch. But I mainly watched it just because I like David Fincher. Let me talk about the characters. The characters are pretty standard. What I mean by that is that the characters that are in the movie because they need to be there for a murder mystery to work. You see what I'm saying? You got the detective, you got the person who helps the detective, you have the person who hires the detective, and of course you have all the different suspects. So there are your characters. And the story, murder mystery, someone got brutally murdered, so they're investigating it. Pretty simple. But what really makes this movie unique is the title character. The character played by Rooney Mara. And that is the girl with the dragon tattoo. And she is what makes 2.5 hours of a murder mystery interesting. There are actually 3 stories in this movie. The main story and 2 sub-stories. You got Daniel Craig's sub-story. You got the girl with the dragon tattoo's sub-story. And then you have the main story. And it all ties together in some way. It was Rooney Mara's performance, and I think she deserves an Oscar for that performance as a supporting role. Maybe even a lead role. I don't know. Would that be considered a lead or a supporting role? Anyways, I think she did an excellent job. Definitely Oscar worthy. Daniel Craig, when I see him not in a kind of a macho role, I'm not used to it, and that's kind of a good thing because it shows that he's a versatile actor. What I think this movie was a little bit too long. It dragged out for me in the very beginning. I couldn't follow it. You have to pay attention to the dialogue to a T. If you have a short attention span, this movie's not for you. The first hour, I couldn't follow any of it. It only started picking up for me, and it started getting really interesting after a terrible scene happened. That scene opened my eyes, and then the rest of the movie was even more interesting from that point on. That was basically the second act, but the first act was so hard to follow for me just because there's so much going on. And 2.5 hours is really long, but I think that for it to be told in its full detail, for someone to really fully understand it, it needs to be an even longer movie. And unfortunately, that doesn't work for all audiences. I think this movie translates better as a book, just because you can iron out all those little details, because there's just so much information. It is really information overload, and if you miss it, you will get lost in a movie, and which is what happened to me. I got the gist of the whole story, but there are just so many characters, so many suspects. The crazy part is that I still enjoyed it. I didn't think it was a bad movie at all. I think it was a good movie. And David Fincher is the perfect director for this type of movie. And one thing about the murder mysteries is that they're very formulaic. You have the guy who hires the detective. You have the detective who is not sure if he can do it. And then later on, you have another character who is so interested in helping the detective out. It was sort of predictable to me. And the most cliche thing is that when killers are revealed, they eventually just lay it all out for you. They lay out the entire story, and they even tell it in flashbacks and everything. And I'm just thinking, wow, this was so simple. That all this build-up led up to this. So I felt a little let down in that department, but that doesn't mean the movie wasn't complete. I just wasn't as satisfied as I would have thought I would have felt. Wow, that sounded funny for some weird reason. Anyways, this is a very, very visceral movie. It's very brutal. There's scenes that'll make you very uncomfortable, and I love that David Fincher is not afraid to put these types of scene on screen. That's just another... The critics gave this movie a pretty big score. I'm gonna have to give it a 7.5. I gave Zodiac a 7, and it gets its extra 0.5 only because of Rooney Mara's character and performance. That element in the movie made it interesting, but I have to conclude that murder mysteries is definitely not my favorite genre. You just have tons of scenes of the detectives looking through archives with a magnifying glass, looking through archives on a microfiche, looking through archives on newspapers, and then you have this musical montage of them in a library looking at archives. Anyways, once again, like I said, 7.5 out of 10. It's contains some very gruesome scenes, and watch it if you can handle that sort of thing. But it's not anything that's totally mind-blowing. This movie has so much hype surrounding it, but in my opinion, I think it would have translated better as a book. Anyways, that's all I have to say for this video. What did you think of the movie? Let me know in the comment section below. My name is Alex Yu, and thanks for watching the Rage Remote review. Peace. It still looks like a cartoon, but they move like humans, and that's because of the amazing motion capture technology that they used in this movie. And it just looks great. It looks beautiful. And one of the things that I